Hi everyone, Omid from Colab here, and welcome back to the third video in our JavaScript series. This one will be mainly covering external libraries and how we use them in JavaScript. So this one will be a little bit less of an interactive coding one and more of just a sort of follow along and see how the process works. If you'd like to code along, feel free, but there are only a few lines and I already have them pre-written up here on the screen. So working inside of the part 3 folder of our JavaScript folder, here we basically want to talk together about how we can kind of acquire and use external libraries in JavaScript. So one of the main reasons first why JavaScript is so popular is because it has so much support for its third-party libraries. And what I mean by that is code that other people have written online that you can easily download and then import into your own project. They also make that whole entire process incredibly easy as well. So there's tons and tons of these powerful community built and driven libraries out there. And you can actually very easily find them on a website called npm.js. So if you want to find a JavaScript library, you could just look it up using Google. There's tons of different websites that feature them. But Npm Js are actually the main guys who actually distribute the packages themselves when you download them. And you can actually search for your package on here, and they have nice custom built pages for every single package that exists. So there are so many of these, thousands beyond the numbers that I can count. But if you want to find a package, you can just search for it on here. It will tell you how to install it. It will give you some nice documentation, some easy links. You can also see how many downloads it has, if it's a popular package, maybe indicating whether or not you want to actually use it. Tons and tons of great information. So let's say that I need something for math, right? Like maybe I need some help when it comes to doing some regular math operations. I need a library that has this stuff covered for me. So I search math. As you can see, just for math alone, we got almost 8,000 packages, over 7,000, so many. Now this Math.js guy, it looks pretty interesting to me, so I'm going to click on him. Now a few things immediately, we see that we have a README. So obviously some good information. I can see the main features that this library has. I can go and visit their website if I'd like. There's some instructions on how to install it. I'll walk you guys through that in a second. They'll often also give you working code snippets or examples of how to actually use their library. So very, very friendly. There's a great community around JavaScript and a lot of its packages. It's so amazing. And also just to show you how popular JavaScript is, this library alone has just shy of 400,000 weekly downloads, so pretty big. You can also see versions, who built it, who are some of the main collaborators. You can go and view the GitHub repo yourself. These are all open source packages too, by the way, so great, great stuff. Now, what if you want to actually install a package? So when you guys installed Node 2 videos ago, you actually also got a download for something called npm, hence the name Npm Js. So npm is a package manager for JavaScript that knows how and where to go and find, and then also safely download and store the packages that you request. There's also an alternative to npm called yarn, spelled Y-A-R-N, just like a string of yarn, which functions just like npm, except it's a bit newer and it has slightly different syntax rules in its commands. We here will just be using npm just for the sake of consistency, but if you do see yarn out there in the wild in documentation, know that yarn is essentially an equivalent of npm. So the way we actually install it, if we go back to our code right here, before writing any code or anything like that, what you have to do is actually navigate to your working directory. So for me, I want to go into part 3. And then what you need to do right here is type out npm. So you want to issue an npm command. And now I want to install a package, but I also have to provide that guy's name. So I'm going to say math.js. Sorry, no dot, just math.js. And I knew that because it says to write this exact command right here. But in general, what you need to do is type out npm to say I need to make an npm command. I want to install something, and then I want the package name up here. Usually they'll also tell you that inside of the usage section or portion of their documentation, but just so you guys know. Now, once I've got that ready, you guys should run that command. And if you run this inside of an empty folder, try to run it there, you'll notice a few things happen. So the first thing, you should have a new folder called node modules, whatever that is. You should have also just had two files auto-generated called a package.json and a package.log.json. Big stuff, okay? So let's walk through these step by step. So the first thing, node modules. This right here is a folder. You'll notice a few subfolders underneath it, and one's actually called math.js. So math.js, what you installed, it's technically called a dependency. So now somewhere in your code, wherever you import the math.js library, you are now dependent on a third-party library that you just installed using npm. But what's not to say that the library that you just installed, math.js, is also not dependent on other libraries itself. So math.js might be using like math2.js. That's a poor example, but it can use its own library. Sorry, it can use other third-party libraries that exist out there. And node modules is actually where all of these dependencies get installed, because you have to install all of math.js's source code in order to be able to run it. So that source code goes into node modules. That's what the folder is for. But everything that math.js is dependent on, you need their source code as well. So math.js is dependent on this JavaScript natural sort library. So now you just install JavaScript natural sort. And if I click on this natural sort file, it's their literal source code. Looks like French to me, but it's their actual literal JavaScript source code. So all of that stuff is downloaded. And the way that we kind of phrase this is that math.js is your main dependency, and it has a bunch of sub-dependencies, like JavaScript natural sort, seed random, not stuff that you asked for, but stuff that has to come along with math.js. And when you install a lot of stuff in big projects, this folder actually gets quite large. Like sometimes I've seen it go over like a gigabyte in size. So just a heads up, in case your projects look very big, that is one of the downsides to developing with JavaScript, very big builds. So that is how we got the actual dependency. What are these two package guys? So the first one, you probably got this file, but it might look slightly different. So first things first, regardless of what's going on here, if your file does not have this type module with a comma at the end of it, I would recommend writing that down right now. That's just a slight little issue with NPM where it does not import that automatically. But basically, only for the first dependency that you install, it will create a file called package.json. And this is essentially a place that lists out all of the dependencies for your project. And it also keeps strict versioning on them. So right now, I only have one dependency, math.js. If I were to go and install a second dependency, it would add a second line right here. And this is just essentially the number. And this little caret means any version above. So any version above 9.4.4 that is less than the next major version, so like 10, it will actually install onto my computer. So this is just basically a way of keeping track of version numbers. Now, package lock is a way of keeping track of more precise version numbers. So, you know, like not 9.4.4, but like what if we update to like 9.4.5? That's how I know the exact version that is currently installed inside of my node modules. So you can see like the actual pathing, like node modules, this Babel subdependency that was installed as a part of downloading math.js. It says, oh, this is where we got the tar file for it from. This is like a key to make sure that it's like secure and safe. This is part of why we use things like npm for safety reasons. What this thing has as a subdependency underneath it, like what is it dependent on? What node level does it require? What version is it, like I was just mentioning? All of that stuff. Now your package lock, just for one package, you can see I got like close to 200 lines. In big projects, like if you ever work inside of a React project, this thing is like 10K plus lines, very big. You normally don't ever need to go inside of this for higher level projects, but just know that it's there. And this keeps track again of exact version numbers. Now, if we want to actually quickly run this code and just kind of give proof that it works, so this is how it actually works. So if you need to use a package that you install, now you don't just automatically get access to it. You have to tell JavaScript and Node like, hey, I actually need access to that. So you do that by writing an import statement, you know, very similar to how like in C++ you do like pound include statements, you know. So here, the basic syntax is we say that we need to import. Then we do this, we'll get back to this. And then we say from, and then the package name. So I just needed to import something from math.js. Now math.js actually exports a lot of things. So this math.js library has a ton of functions built into it. Like it has a round function, it probably has a function that does X, Y, and Z, right? But you don't get access to all of them. I just need access to the round function, nothing else. So you use this little bracket notation where you say just import round. And round is a function that you now have access to. Now, if I wanted to, I could list out like X, and I could just space them out and delimit them with a comma. But obviously X is not a real thing. I don't need that. I just need round. And then the way that we use it, it's pretty simple from there. You literally just call the round function. So I'm creating a variable called rounded num, and I want it to be the rounded version of 2.6, and then I just want to log that out. So if I literally just type node app.js, you'll see that I now get this 3 number printed out because it just rounded 2.6 up to 3. So very simple, very straightforward. It's very easy to use these packages, really nice, and you can just kind of take what you need. This actually makes your project more efficient by only importing the round function, because math.js, I know for a fact, is very big. It exports a lot of different functions, so saves you some runtime efficiency as well, so very cool. But hopefully everyone was able to learn a lot about how to use external libraries with JavaScript here, and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks, guys.